Welcome to footballgameplan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook, bringing you our 2011 Conference USA preview, one of the more underrated conferences in all of college football. So let's just start with the recruiting trail and see how well these teams recruited this past offseason. Best recruiting class in Conference USA. Let's go with SMU. They did a great job of addressing the defensive needs. They're going to keep that 3-4 stacked, and the headliner of that group is Devon Moreland. This guy was one of the top linebackers in the country, a 4-star recruit, but this guy can play defensive end. He can rush the passer. This guy also excels in pass coverage and outstanding selection, and should start from day one for the Mustangs. Some key recruits in Conference USA. Let's start with East Carolina's tailback Chevelle Bowie. This guy reminds me a lot of Tremaine Stevens that played for North Carolina State in the 90s. This guy is a silky smooth runner, should be a phenomenal player. Houston was able to get a linebacker to address their defensive needs. Lloyd Allen, 6'4", 240, an aggressive run stuffer, and also can get after the quarterback. Marshall was able to snag Florida's former recruit Chavon Van. This guy is probably going to start from day one, a very solid player. Now you look at Memphis. Big wide receiver in Jermaine Johnson. This guy catches everything with his hands and is an outstanding route runner. Now you also look at Rice coming in, getting the cornerback Jalon Fenner. This guy plays some receiver in high school, but he also plays some running back. But this guy is going to be an outstanding player for the Owls. My LSU recruit Jiron Taylor is going to come in and do a great job for Southern Miss. Is going to help bolster that receiving core and that passing game. You look at Tulane getting the tailback Dante Butler out of New Orleans. Guy that has outstanding footwork and knows how to read block. Should be a solid contributor for the Green Wave. Tulsa wanted to address some offensive line. They got a great one in Garrett Glad. This guy's going to be a solid player for years to come for the Golden Hurricane. Johnny Cockrell was a solid running back in high school out of Mississippi, but he also is a very good corner. Guy's going to fit in nicely with that tough, aggressive secondary of UAB. UCF was able to get a nice defensive lineman out of the JUCO ranks. Toby Jackson going to come in and start right away and should help continue that aggressive style defense that they run out there in Orlando. UTEP was able to get an outstanding linebacker in Josh Feeley. This guy excels in pass coverage and is a ferocious hitter. Let's take a look at some Conference USA superlatives, starting with the best quarterbacks in conference. You have to go with Tulsa Golden Hurricanes quarterback G.J. Kennedy. This guy's an amazing passer, can make all the throws, live arm, but what he doesn't get enough credit for is his ability to pull it down and take off running. Always keeps the Golden Hurricane ahead of the chains. A very tremendous player. Best running backs in conference, you have to give it to the Houston Cougars. You look at guys like Bryce Bill, Michael Hayes, and also getting Charles Sims back. All these guys are very outstanding runners, but what is underrated is their ability to catch the football out of the backfield, making them a very explosive unit. Best receiving core in conference, I'm going with SMU. These guys can catch the football, and that's an understatement. You look at guys like Cole Beasley, over 1,000 yards, Darius Johnson, over 800. But keep an eye on sophomore Keenan Holman and senior Bradley Haynes. These guys are outstanding pass catchers that can run after the catch. Best offensive line, staying out there in Dallas, going with SMU. All 5 starters returned. Kelvin Beachum is a very solid left tackle. Blake Majunkin is another guy that I really like at the center's position. Best defensive line, he's hanging out in Dallas again. The SMU Mustangs are phenomenal up front. They run a 3-4 defense, and guys like Taylor Thompson and Marquise Frazier keep that defense very aggressive. Best linebacking core, I'm going with the Tulsa Golden Hurricane. These guys can really get after the quarterback. That guy right there, Sean Jackson, freshman All-American. But senior middle linebacker Cornelius Arnick is a guy that's very underrated, makes a lot of tackles, and helps that defense stay on pace. That's secondary. I'm going with a surprise. I'm going with UAB. I really like their secondary. I think they have a very solid group in my opinion. These guys all can come up and lay the lumber. And you look at TJ Blue. This guy always has his hands on the football. Best special teams unit, you have to give it up to the Rice Owls. These guys have an outstanding returner in Andy Erickson, but it's the punter, Kyle Martins, who's a Ray Guy candidate, a guy that's an outstanding player and has a bright future ahead of him. Offensive MVP, I'm going with East Carolina's quarterback Dominic Davis. This guy had an outstanding year last season and should have a stellar campaign this year. Almost 4,000 yards passing, 37 touchdowns, 64% completion percentage, and he also has the ability to get outside the pocket, making plays with his legs. Defensive MVP, I'm going with Central Florida's safety Kamal Ismail. This guy is a ball hawk and also has the size to come up and lay the pop in the backfield. Freshman of the Year in Conference USA, I'm going with Central Florida's true freshman Leland Willingham. This guy's going to start at weak side linebacker, and he's a ferocious hitter. Should fit nicely in that aggressive style defense. Team on the rise, I'm going with Tulane. I think they're headed in the right direction. I like what's going on down there in New Orleans. They have a solid running game. They're a veteran team this year, and the schedule sets up nice for these guys to make a run. You see right there, Orleans Darkwa is a guy that could really run the rock. And so you look at Tulane making those adjustments. Bob Toledo is going to get these guys to play up to par this season. Toughest schedule. Look at Tulsa's schedule. The Golden Hurricane have to travel to Oklahoma and Boise State and also face a talented Oklahoma State team all in the month of September. Then you look at the road games in conference. They have to go to Central Florida this year and they have to finish up at UTEP. Tough schedule. Here are my Conference USA predictions. Memphis Tigers I have finishing 6. Reasons for optimism. There's nowhere to go but there are some bright spots on that defense. You look at defensive tackle Frank Trotter and Don Terry Poe. These guys are very solid up front. And you also have to like the linebacker Deron Fur. Now, causes for concern, that defense gave up 40 points a game last season, a lot of yards. They need to find someone offensively that can provide a spark, but what we'll learn is that Memphis will improve over last year's record. Next up is the Thundering Herd. Reasons for optimism. They're going to lean a little bit more on their running game this year, which they should. And also you love the fact that defensive end Vinny Curry and his 12 sacks are back in the fold. Causes for concern, the quarterback position, there's a lot of inconsistencies there and there's holes on the offensive line. But what we will learn is that Marshall will be competitive in each and every game this season. I have UAB finishing 4th. Reasons for optimism. You have to love the well-balanced attack that they have. Very good quarterback in Brian Ellis, and defensively they have a strong secondary. Now, causes for concern is that defensive line. They can't get to the quarterback. They have to find a pass rush. But what we will learn this year is that UAB will probably squeak in enough wins to get to a bowl game. Next up is ECU. Reasons for optimism. The offense is set, led by quarterback Dominic Davis, and they have an explosive core of wide receivers, and defensively they have a really good cornerback in Emmanuel Davis. Now, causes for concern. When you give up 44 points a game defensively, there's a lot of questions that has to be answered, and that's the biggest concern I have with ECU. How well is that defense? But what we will learn is that this team is a dark horse candidate to win the conference. Number 2 is Central Florida. Reasons for optimism. You have to love the backfield combination of Latarius Murray and Ronnie Weaver. These guys can run the football against anybody in the country, and their defense is still very aggressive. I really like their secondary. Causes for concern. They lose Bruce Miller, and they also lose 3 of the 4 top receivers on that offense. But what we will learn is that Central Florida has enough talent to win Conference USA outright. Next up is Southern Miss. Reasons for optimism. Quarterback Austin Davis is a phenomenal passer, and they return their top 2 rushers and their leading wide receiver, and the defense is a senior laden bunch. Causes for concern is that offensive line. How well can they protect? But what we'll learn is that Southern Miss has the schedule and the talent to maybe run the table and finish undefeated. Moving over to the West, UTEP I had finishing 6th. Reasons for optimism. You have to love the defense returning 8 starters, and they were a solid bunch last season. They should only improve on those numbers. Now, causes for concern. Offensively, they've been depleted by graduation. They lose Trevor Vitito, they lose Donald Buckram. All offensive line starters are missing, and the receiving core, it has a huge question mark. But what we'll learn is that UTEP is about 2 years away from being back in a bowl game. At number 5, I have Tulane finishing. Reasons for optimism. You have to love the linebacker Trent Mack and the defensive lineman Desmond Moses. These guys can cause havoc in the backfield, and you got to like running back Orleans Darkwa. Now, causes for concern. They need some explosiveness at the wide receiver position. They lost some guys last season. I love the quarterback they have in Ryan Griffin, but what we will learn is that Tulane has enough senior leadership to push close for a bowl game this season. Next up is the Rice Owls. Reasons for optimism. You have to look at that offense. I think they're very solid and very set. The tailback Sam McGuffey is a big play waiting to happen. Quarterback Taylor McHargue, guy that stepped in right away and played exceptionally well. Causes for concern is that defensive line. They have problems getting to the quarterback, and they have to solve that in a hurry in order to have some success. But what we will learn is that Rice still has enough playmakers to possibly make it to a bowl game. At number 3, I have the Golden Hurricane. Reasons for optimism. You have to love G.J. Kinney and that offensive line. They're going to keep him well protected, and the linebackers are one of the best in the conference. Now, you look at running back position. That's a cause for concern, and also that defensive line. Can they get to the quarterback with the front 4? But what we will learn is that Tulsa has enough offensive playmakers to possibly challenge for the number 1 spot. At number 2, I have the Houston Cougars. Reasons for optimism. They get Case Keenum back, and he should be a Heisman Trophy candidate. That's going to help that offense out a lot, and the backfield is very talented. But causes for concern, that defensive line. These guys gave up 209 yards rushing last season. That has to improve. But what we will learn is that Houston's offense will keep these guys in a lot of ball games. At number 1, I'm going with SMU. Reasons for optimism: you have to love 18 starters back on a team that made a bowl last season. Quarterback Kyle Quadron is one of the true field generals, and Zach Lyons is one of the top tailbacks in the country. They have one of the best O-lines and best D-lines in the conference. Cause for concern is the linebacker position. They're breaking in some newbies, but what we will learn is that if they can get past Texas A&M in week 1, SMU can go undefeated. For more college football conference previews, visit footballgameplan.com/collegefootball or visit our YouTube channel at youtube.com/footballgameplan. And listen to the Football Game Plan radio show, which airs Saturdays 11 a.m. Eastern Time at blogtalkradio.com/footballgameplan.